Quick, everyone, tell me your favorite meal. And I'll judge you accordingly, but I also might steal it. In the top right of tokamak, we have herO. And in the bottom left, it is Byun. Byun, with an upset, in my eyes, defeated MaxPax. Was able to kind of ramp up after our first game loss, the aggression, to the point that by the third game, it looked like Byun was just punching left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, and MaxPax couldn't keep up. Whereas what usually happens is that a Terran player who doesn't, try and just simply macro against the guy, tries to go for the punch, but then something goes really wrong. And they're like, oh, I missed that one. Okay, hold on, give me a second. And then they don't get a second because the Zealots come in, the Warp Prism comes in, the macro kicks in, like whatever it is. And I thought that was going to happen, but it did not. MaxPax was still so thrown off by all the relentless aggression. Reaper Hellion into a tank push, into a double medevac drop, into the kind of main attack, while simultaneously deflecting any type of Warp Prism pressure before it really got bad. He was able to nip that in the bud every single time. Led to a victory that was even easy by the end of it. He doesn't often get that, though. This is not like the first time that he's tried doing those things. And it's certainly not the first time that MaxPax has had to deal with those things, as most likely these Terran players will try and throw him off in the early to mid game. But something about today really worked out. And now we have herO. Now, this might set Byun fans up as like, now you're optimistic. You're like, Byun's going to do it. Byun's going to win the entire thing. Byun's amazing. Well, he is amazing, and he's truly a lovable soul and all that. But herO is a different Protoss, and that sometimes works in Byun's favor, and sometimes it doesn't. And it's really hard to say which one it is today. If MaxPax had just won against Byun, and Byun's like in the lower bracket now facing herO, I'd be like, don't worry, Byun fans. Like, this could go either way. Like, who knows what the hell's going to happen? But in a weird way, Byun having now won against MaxPax might try and do the same things that he did versus MaxPax. Because, that certainly doesn't seem broke. Don't fix it. They might work a lot less versus herO. You know what I'm trying to say here? Like, he might have been so focused on trying to defeat MaxPax, and then it was successful. You're like, oh, fuck yeah, like, I'm going to do the same thing. That maybe you just do it again against someone who might, again, be better against it. And so that's when you're, like, kind of slapped back into reality, and you're like, oh, right, shit, okay. Need to refocus here. But it's actually very difficult to say between these two. Right now, I can say that Byun is doing the same factory expand opener. So we know that he's doing a very similar thing. But what is herO's response going to be here? He's lost his adept. One adept will be able to escape home. Second stalker is on the way. So you manage to fit in 4 gateway units. Sometimes you only fit in 3 before Warp Gate's done. That might just be what is needed here. That little extra DPS kills both Hellions now on top of the Reapers. Reapers don't actually get stuck. They manage to get into the main base. That's probably 4 probes dead. Make that 5. Yeah. I guess that's still pretty good. Because the 2 adepts also died. 2 SCPs died too, though. No one's getting a perfect response here. No one's shutting this down completely. Alright, what is everyone's favorite food? Tartar beefsteak? I actually like that, but that is difficult to find. Liver-flavored dog treats. Classic. Big fan of the Scooby snacks. General Tso chicken and fried rice with egg rolls. My taste for Chinese food has decreased. Maybe because the Chinese food here isn't very good. I don't know. Guti Vankaya. I do not know what that is. What is that? Chicken, rice, and vegetables. It is boring, but with the right seasonings can be quite good. Ooh, Italian. I have actually kind of wanted Italian lately. That's a good call. We found it. You reminded me of something I had a hankering for. Now that that's done, the most important thing, back to the game. Byun, obviously getting up to 2 bases, no problem. Scans an observer. Does he know what he's up against? herO is going way different. Way different. He is going 2 base, charge storm. And Byun, here's kind of to my point, so I sound smarter. He might just be thinking, well, I gotta protect myself against the blink attack. herO is kind of as likely nowadays, I would say, to go blink into Warp Prism off of 3-gate. So that's very reasonable. So I'm gonna defend. I'm gonna set up my SimCity. I'm gonna get my tank sieged. I'm not gonna bother scouting aside from a little harassment, but that's not my main goal. My main goal is not scouting. And that would be fine against someone who does typically do the same thing over and over again. But it's not fine against someone who goes 2-base storm. I mean, Byun just has 0 idea. Where'd that Raven go? The Raven will probably be the first thing that scouts this, because if it goes into the main, it's going to see the Templar Archives, or it's going to be feedbacked. Fedback? You know what I mean. What is it? Feedbacked, yeah? It's got to be feedbacked. This feed isn't like the main word there. Anyway. But that's still pretty freaking late. And that's so late he does his attack. This is, I think, the really dangerous part. Like, if he scouts it late, but Byun has been turtling nonstop, then maybe that's not as much of a problem. What's really problematic is when you don't know it's storm charge, and then you run your army across the map, get surrounded by zealots, get stormed by a warp prism, and you're like, well, what the fuck? That was not cool, man. herO actually, he might not have... Okay, he was going to be scouted in a mere second anyway. Funnily enough, he missed the feedback, and now he stormed his own probes. But I wonder if that was worth it, letting Byun know about it in advance, just with a single storm. Which doesn't kill anything, by the way. 2 storms can. But 1 almost never does. Well, I liked this for herO, and I'm not sure that I like it anymore. Oh, he meant to storm just the turrets, but he also stormed his probes, just to be clear. He absolutely caught 2 of his probes in a storm. 10 probes have died. herO is now sharking around for a true fight. So these storms have been to injure, to maim, to drain energy, but they're not really the true fight. But the true fight happens when you also have zealots. And, well, not a lot of zealots right now. Just a lot of stalkers, really. I don't know if I like this. It's a good amount of storms. Beyond, obviously, no ghosts. He's going to have to rely on his splits, and that is a lot of storms. Immortal does manage to get the last shots and a couple of Marauders as well. That's not all of Byun's army, though. Byun didn't bring his Widow Mines and his tanks. He was just so caught up, perhaps, in the idea of a surround, he kind of forgot. I'm not sure what happened there. Because I think that actually, that was pretty crucial. Those units would have been very helpful. Now 3 tanks coming in to try and be as helpful as they can, but after a warp-in did happen, and after the Archons were successfully merged, they will help clean things up, but 24 SCVs died, so I'd say that was a successful attack from herO. Byun agrees. herO does win. GG's. Very unfortunate for Byun, who thought that herO was going to track his army. So just to explain that initially, Byun had sieged up where he did, and that might look like, why the hell? You know, what a goofball leaving his tanks back there. Why were they there in the first place? I think it was because he figured the army was going to come from that direction. So he wanted to get the jump on it. You know, herO's thinking, okay, now's my time to shine. I'm going to run after the army. Oh my god, it's already sieged. Yeah. But he just went the other way, and Byun didn't know about the proxy gateway on the right side either, because that would have been a very big tell as to where the Protoss army was probably going to come in from. It might have also been to try and initially avoid any, like, storms that were sharking around. Like, just storms, not the entire army. But it's probably why Byun's army was where it was. but then he doesn't bring his tanks in the Widow Mines, and I think that actually could have contributed a lot. The fight with the Storms versus the Bio was quite close. The Storms were very hurtful. Army was dying, but 3 extra tanks even unsieged in that fight before the Archons emerged, before the Zealots got warped in, I think, in the last Warp Prism. Maybe they came from the Proxy Gateway, to be fair. I think that could have reduced the SEV kills. And then if only 12 SEVs were killed, does the game have a chance to continue on? I don't know. That is what happened. Byun lost. herO is up 1. And now we're on Killer's Mile. Top right herO, bottom left Byun. Auto turrets are great anti-storm play. Cheated his buildings from doesn't do anything.
Thank you.
It was very odd seeing him storm it, regardless. Even if it did. Like, unless the storm literally killed the auto turrets instantly. You know, like, you really think it through. You're not in the midst of the game trying to do everything at once. You really think it through, and you're like, there is no reason to storm that. You just pull the probes away like you normally would. Cuddle Bunny, thank you very much for the 59 months. So, Byun, he did get surprised by the storm. Okay, like if he had seen the Templar archives before he moved out, he changes how he plays. I'm not exactly sure how he changes, to be fair. I've seen Terrans turtle from that knowledge. I've seen Terrans still try and move out. They're just more careful, being like kind of pretty split, having a scouting marine out in front, you know, that kind of thing. But I know it's different. The fact that he was able to still only get stormed once, and that was his detection, if you will, I thought was still a pretty good sign for Byun. I was like, oh yeah, I don't know if herO should have shown that. But then herO didn't know it was going to be a secret for much longer, and it actually wasn't, because the Raven was going to come in. Yeah. And he hadn't built up the army that you need to really go out on the front and kill the opponent, so... yeah, okay, just one little storm, get the damage done, okay, fine. But Byun probably would have played that different if he had known it earlier. Simple as he wouldn't have had his army awkwardly on the left side of the map, thinking he'd either interfere with the incoming attack or that he'd, you know, be safer against random storms that were being dropped, whatever the reason. He just wouldn't have been over there, I think. And if he has you have 3 tanks sieged up on his natural and his main against that incoming attack, yeah, I don't think there's any way that actually works. And then herO's the one in trouble. Is the downside to doing Storm Charge, very early on, you might not have a lot of units. I mean, hell, even with the main attack, it didn't look like that many units. But early on, maybe you don't have that many units. You're investing in a pretty expensive technology, having to prioritize the gas to get the Storm and the High Templars. A little harassment here. You delay your 3rd base. You know, it's a lot. But then you get the Storm Charge, and you're pretty powerful for that time. But what happens if you don't win the game or do a lot of damage to the Terran is that you have to make a transition eventually, because they will get ghosts. And they will have good placement, and they will have pre-splits. And then that's where it gets really troublesome. Trying to make that transition over into Colossus for a more dependable splash option is usually where the Terran gets a little time to shine. And we just didn't get to that point. Byun was not prepared enough. But now that he's been smacked back into reality, he did have a certain idea of how TVP was going to go based off of many of his other TVPs today, and he was wrong for that game. Now that he's been reminded that's an option, like, oh, okay, right, they could do that, he's going to be more on guard against it. And we have herO actually doing the same thing, Charge Storm, 2 base. Byun almost certainly is going to be more mindful of scouting, at least before he pushes out. Excuse me. Good run for Shino today. there's a best Zerg prize. Or there was, anyway. I guess they got rid of it. Yeah. That's too bad. I guess it wasn't attracting enough Zergs. Ishino was the only Zerg left. Did go up against Max Packs, though. herO Byun is the winners finals, by the way, as we do have a move out. Okay. Okay. And then we are waiting for either Max Packs, Jumi, or Spirits to come back up from the lower bracket. That move out might have been just to look for a couple of units pesky on the front lines, like the Scouting Adept, or hell, even the Observer. The tank's there for protection in case anything worse. I don't know if I would mind a tank push, though. Adept has seen the army moving around. It sees more Marines coming from the high ground. This is kind of giving indications that they might actually push you. But now that it's been seen so thoroughly, I don't think Byun should do it. Which maybe is what Byun is thinking too. He's like, if it was a surprise, if I could get sieged up before the guy even knew I was over there, maybe I would have tried. But yeah, not now. And it would have been, to be honest, it would have been very dangerous to do any type of tank push prior to medevacs. Because even though, as I was saying earlier, very early on, there just aren't that many units when you go for Charge Storm. One Storm with combat shieldless Marines and even a handful of charge lots would still be very effective against this type of army. So it would be a pretty big risk. Now you start adding in the medevacs for healing, you get combat shields, and you get some tankier Marauders, and that feels a little more comfortable. Oh, Storm Drops. Storm Drops killing 4 SUVs. That's fine. It's not done yet, though. 6 SEVs is still fine, actually. That is 2 High Templars worth of Storms, but we do have Recharge available, which I think, people are suspecting might change how effective this opener is. This was a very bad fight for Byun. This was not it. With a capital not. Oh my god. Well, that's just game. That is, that was bad. He races forward to, I guess, try and catch herO without the High Templars, but he had more High Templars. And whether it was 5 more or 2 more, that was always a guarantee. There'd be more High Templars. First medevac almost dies because it raced forward so much. His tanks weren't sieged, and the Zealots were totally prepared. I guess Byun thought herO wouldn't be as ready to go. That was not the case. Oh, boy. Well, that's that. herO wins 2-0. Was playing completely differently from Max Packs, and as I said in the beginning of the series, if Byun was just kind of honing in, like, I gotta beat Max Packs, I gotta beat Max Packs, how do I beat Max Packs, how do I beat Max Packs? Max Packs does do the same thing a lot of the time, and that can absolutely be seen as a weakness. I hesitate to say a weakness because he's pretty freaking good with it, but it can be seen as a weakness. And so just to kind of go from that to what we just saw, I mean, that is about as different as you can be with still using the same race. And Byun, I think, got a little shaken up by that. So he will not advance to the finals. He now awaits the winner of Spirit versus Max Packs.